edit it out.
Hey folks, we're back. Tara and Christina, we're back. Coming at you with another episode of the F-Bomb.
So today we're going to talk about a little bit about imposter syndrome.
As we alluded to in our first kind of episode. So today we're going to do a little deep dive, within the 20-minute kind of period we have with you guys to talk about imposter syndrome, the nitty gritty about it, and really look at, hopefully by the end of this, how to really support all of you with trying to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if a lot of people understand what imposter syndrome is.
No.
When you hear the word imposter, it almost sounds like, well, what do you think? Like,
yeah,
you're fake.
Yeah,
right?
you're
when
totally
you think
fake.
about imposter.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a more simple term to put it. So people might feel like, imposter syndrome being someone that you're not.
Exactly. And that's exactly what it really is. Like if you look at some of the research and the literature out there on imposter syndrome, it's just simply defined as feeling like you're a fraud or that you're not someone who you allude to be or you're trying to be. Like when I think back to all my training in school, we would always call that like you're putting on a costume or you're following a script and a role. And maybe you are for your job, right? You have, a set defined kind of position. And so you feel like you have to follow that in some capacity, right? So that's what I would think imposter syndrome really is. It's just you feel like a fake.
Yeah. Like you're not good enough for your job.
That you're acting.
Yeah.
Really. You're acting the part.
You're saying you can do all these things.
Yeah.
But deep down, you're wondering if really these are the things that you were able to deliver on.
Yeah. So, and I know Tara and I, like in this episode, we'll talk a lot about our experiences, but I think what's important for us is that you reflect upon, is this something you've experienced in your lifetime? And I guarantee you have, whether you're male or female, we all feel it.
Yeah. I mean, this podcast is all tailored about, women in leadership. So you would think career wise, but we can all be leaders in different aspects of our lives as well.
Yeah.
So not only is it tailored towards your career, you can feel imposter syndrome throughout your career.
Yes.
But you can also feel it personally.
Oh my God.
Personal life.
Mother, my God. Do I ever feel it sometimes?
Like, I think we all do.
Yeah, 100%. But it's, talk about what it is, but really, we know, and again, both of us have done a lot of research on this. We do a lot of reading. We talk to a lot of people every day. We know that it affects, obviously, women more than men. It doesn't negate that men don't experience it, but it does. It affects men or women more than men. And it shows in research over and over and over again.
Right.
And we also know that depending on your racial or ethnic background, that it can affect you even more than just say a white woman, So, and there's a lot of reasons for that. And we're going to talk about that soon. But certainly, I think, that's the gist of it. That's why we wanted to bring this to this particular episode is that we know women go through this every day.
Yeah. So I don't know if you want to start with some examples or.
Yeah, we could talk about some examples for sure. I mean, I talked about this in the first episode where I felt like a fraud, particularly through my PhD, right? You're expected to know all this stuff and all the literature. And funny enough, way back when I was going through my PhD, I actually did a little bit of research on this because I was like, I can't be the only one that feels like this. And it's really prevalent. A lot of students who go through their doctorate degree feel like they're frauds. They feel like they're an imposter because you are made to perform, basically. I think that's what my PhD taught me very inadvertently was how to perform on a stage. And feel like you're supposed to know everything and you're the expert, but really you're not.
Yeah. You're up there learning with the rest of them, right?
Yeah. And I think that's what I try to I convey to my students even now. I teach part-time, but I say to them, you know what? I'm not going to know everything and that's okay. Like I'm here to teach you some of the basic curriculum, but if there's something we don't know, let's explore it together because that's really what learning is about. Yeah. I don't know. Do you feel
even as, working together, I see you as a leader and I see the way that you tell your team the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you have your team that come to you and they might be, seeing things that you're not seeing.
Yes.
Or they may know a little bit more about something than you do where, it allows you to learn.
Yeah. And actually I expect my team to know more than I do in certain areas.
Yeah.
I have to know surface level and maybe high level, but I want my team to know the in-depth stuff and really bring me up to speed when I don't know anything about that particular aspect, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What about your experiences?
Oh boy. So I used to work in an oil and gas industry.
Yeah.
So I started out as an
Sorry.
executive assistant there, but my career quickly grew as the company did. Over time it was absorbed by a larger company.
Mhm.
And so I worked on a national level and then moving up to a American level. So luckily though, I had a really, really, really great boss. I had two great bosses throughout that tenure of my career. And although they saw the potential in me
Yeah.
and they chose to like reach down and pull me up, I constantly thought to myself, I don't know what they see in me. I don't know if I can do this.
Yeah.
And I actually ended up making it as chief of staff. And it was all about learning along the way.
Okay.
So, you see people that they see the potential that you have and they want to bring you along with them. Let them see that potential.
Yeah.
And it's our own worst enemy that are telling ourselves, oh my God, what if they find out that I can't actually do that?
Yeah.
Right. And
Well,
I
and that's
think,
crucial, right? Like, I think that point is crucial that you
right.
had these two like awesome bosses, right? That
Yeah.
could recognize those key aspects in somebody to say they have a lot of potential.
Yeah.
And let's pull them out of their comfort zone.
Yeah.
Let's really harness their kind of energy, their potential, even though you didn't feel it, right?
Yeah.
But now look at where that's led you,
So I
right?
had both sides of that where I actually felt like I was found out at one point. So one of the VPs that I was working alongside with, they called me up and told me that I was not needed, that I didn't know what I was doing. They lived in a different province than I did. However, when my boss found out about that, and he was the one that saw the potential in me and was like, no, we're going to get you there. We're going to do this. He flew me out to that province and he put me in that meeting and he had me teach an entire curriculum on how they can better their communication
That's
with their
amazing.
customers. So yeah, it
But you
was
felt like you were
at
found
that,
out.
I felt like I was found out. And I'm like, oh no, he knows. He's going to tell everybody now. No one's going to think I've deserved this.
Right? But see, that's amazing, right? Like you feel like you're found out, but then at the same time your boss is like, "Nope, let's go. You're gonna move past this,"
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I think that's and that like we're gonna come back to that because that's a real big strategy to remember.
Yeah.
Both as a leader, but also somebody who's experiencing that kind of imposter syndrome.
Right.
And I know that like people who we're speaking to today, like our audience, probably has aspects where they felt like imposters, and it doesn't have to be throughout your career. It could be at points in your career, right? Where you feel like,
Yeah.
oh shit, they're going to find me out in some capacity, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't really know what they're telling me that I should know, but let's just make it up as we go, right?
You
And
just smile and nod.
smile and nod and we're through it.
Yeah.
And I think, there's a couple reasons as to why. And this kind of we can shift into talking about like why this really exists in the first
Mhm.
place, right?
Yeah.
We know that, we've done a lot of reading, and I was talking to Tara before we started to film this episode, and there's a lot of bias in the system. So I
Yes.
think there's a lot of reasons as to why this exists. One of them is like if you don't have good leadership at the helm, I think that sets up a lot of people for
Yeah.
feeling like this,
Yes.
or feeling like they're not good enough or that they are failing in some capacity or that they're going to be found out and they have to act a certain part, right?
Mhm.
I also think, and stop me like at any time, by the way,
Uh-huh.
right? Like, I think we have a bias in the system that's existed for a long time where women have been set up to fail, so to speak, or haven't been accommodated. I shouldn't even say they've been set
Yeah.
up to fail. They haven't been acknowledged as being kind of hardworking, valued kind of members of teams for a long time.
That could also be due to the way that our leaders, if we have leaders like that in our
Yeah.
lives, that could be the way that they were taught throughout their career as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it could very well be something where it's something that they learned along the way. And, change is always hard to shift that mindset, especially when you've been taught something for
Yeah.
so long.
Yeah.
To now, all of a sudden, like the world has changed so quickly
Yeah.
in the last few years alone that now companies are putting it within their business plans and their strategies to have
Yeah.
more women in leadership positions, where you still have the people that have been at these companies for a long, long time that are considered like the experts in their fields. And throughout that entire time, it has been where it is like more male dominated in the higher leadership roles. When these days, that's not the case.
It's true. It's true. And then, so that's what we would call like really systemic bias, but it's also generational where it's a hard thing to break.
It is.
Right. And you have to be able to recognize it as a leader.
Mhm.
There's some really great researchers and authors out there, keynote speakers that I've heard talk
Mhm.
all about not only imposter syndrome, but really breaking those kind of generational leadership issues.
Yeah.
Right. And so if that's what you've known and you've been taught, how do you break that? How do you recognize the gaps or the challenges or the failings of that
Yeah.
type of leadership style and move forward in a capacity that's authentic to yourself, but also accommodates some of the systemic barriers and issues, right? Yeah. So I think, we know that it's existed for quite some time and that there are a variety of reasons. I can't just say like, talking about it, that it's just systemic. There's certainly ways that like, you could set up a culture of acceptance and inclusivity, but that's not going to stop somebody feeling like, you know what, I don't really feel like I fit in, right? Or I feel
Yeah.
like I'm fraudulent in some capacity,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I do think it is a more personal mindset.
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be something that someone has gone through.
Yeah.
It might just be somebody that's wanting to be at a particular spot in their career,
Yeah.
and they may have that opportunity, but maybe them themselves don't feel like they're there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think maybe we could talk about impacts because that's really what it is. It's the impact to that person's kind of psyche and performance, their own self-confidence, basically, right?
Right.
Is where they're going to feel it.
Yeah.
I know from personal experience, I can give you one example that's really great. So when I was in my PhD, I had to do what they called, oh man, I can't even think of it. Basically, you studied basically over 300 articles and books in a 4-month period.
Wow.
Right. And it's comprehensives. That's what it's called. See,
Okay.
brain fart. But anyways, so I had to write these comprehensives and we had to write 2 as PhDs. And that was done in your second year. After you did your courses, it was comprehensive time. And I remember I had to write this one comprehensive. And when you write the comprehensive exam, it's like a 10-page exam. You take it home, you write it, you have all access to these books and whatever. And then you submit it to a committee, they review it, and then they bring you in and question you.
Oh.
Right? Like it was pretty intense. We're writing my one comprehensive exam and they failed me. I came home feeling like an absolute failure. And from that point forward, I felt like I'm not good enough for this, right? I'm not good enough for this. So they allowed me to write it again so long as I took a course. So I had to drive every week 5 hours down south, take the course, come back, drive back. Then I had to study for my comprehensives all over again. Meanwhile, while I'm doing this, I feel like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I doing this? Because I know I'm going to fail again. I can arm myself with all this knowledge and blah, blah, blah. And they're still going to say that I don't know what I'm talking about. Right?
Well,
Yeah.
that's what you're thinking.
That's
You
what
don't
you're
know.
thinking,
That's what
right?
you're thinking.
And I thought in that capacity, I felt like I had to put on an act. So I would go to class and I put on an act. I would put on, I know all about that. And I would, tout off answers or get into the discussion and whatever. I wrote my comprehensive exams again. And lo and behold, I failed yet again. And it wasn't because of me, I found out.
Yeah.
It was because of my committee. They did not like my supervisor.
Really?
Yes. So politics. So here you are feeling like an absolute failure. I feel like an absolute failure. And I find out it's not really me,
Yeah.
right? It's the system.
Yeah.
It's the politics.
Yes.
Right? So then, but the impact is real.
Mhm.
It feels
Yeah.
real and it has real consequences.
Yes. It can affect you for the rest of your life. It
Yeah.
just carries along in your life.
Well,
with
and
you.
think how that carries into your, for you, how did that carry into your, trying to do your work on a regular basis or
Yeah.
interacting with people on a regular basis, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
The impact is super real,
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think, once you know that impact, and I think once you feel it, there are ways that we can certainly combat
Mhm.
and deal with imposter syndrome on a regular basis. Um,
Do
there
you
are
have any specific examples that
Mm.
did you do anything during that time?
No, I wasn't that
recognize it
smart
and-
at that time. Not like I am today.
Now that she has her PhD in hand, she can start it.
Now that I know what I have to do with my PhD, like certainly there are definitely ways of like combating when you don't feel like you're good enough, or when in the moment you feel like, oh my God, they're gonna find me out in some capacity.
Right.
And there are things you can implement, I think, every day that help that. And as a leader, I think there are things that help us set up an environment where staff feel like they're included or that they can voice the truth.
Yes. But to start off,
Yeah.
why don't we talk about ways that we can, as individuals,
Yeah,
set ourselves up to feel like we're not imposters?
for sure. Like the first one would be, and the one that first comes to mind for me is like making a list of things that you've accomplished.
Yeah.
Think back, to day one, where you felt most successful. That is an accomplishment. List it. Have it ready. I mean, physically write it out
Yep.
and have it available.
I actually have a folder of
Oh
achievements.
my God, I love it. That's exactly what
And
you do.
they're at my home office.
Yes.
And so, like, if I'm going for a job interview
Yes.
or, I'm going through, a project at work that I
Yeah.
feel like I just need a little bit of more encouragement,
Yeah.
or maybe just some ideas. I
Yeah.
have like those lists. I have actual projects in my folder at home
Yeah.
that are projects that I have achieved.
And that's key. And I would say when you go through courses and you get these stupid certificates at the end of it.
Yeah.
Those are not stupid certificates. Those are
Right.
things you should be putting in that folder.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So yes, and that's exactly it is. Write a list, get a folder, like what you that's one way to just remind yourself of how much you've actually accomplished and how much you've done to get to this point.
Right.
In some cases, I've heard people say, like, you know how you have a resume and you try to keep your resume up to date?
Yeah.
Well, have a list of accomplishments that you keep up to date. We in the academic realm,
Yeah.
we call that a curriculum vitae. And we keep it up to date. We have to. That's our job, right? It tells what we've done in our job. And there's all sorts of things you can include in that. Like, it's not just job related. Like, what if you do volunteer work? Include that. That's like a key way to kind of remember, wow, I've really done quite a bit.
So then if we're going to be listing, going through our achievements, what would you classify an achievement as?
I think it's just where you feel success, where you
Yeah.
have felt success.
Right.
Could be a project.
Yep.
This is what I did. Look, and it could be a big project, could be a small little thing,
Yeah.
or I was tasked to create like a multi-million-dollar budget. Great. Save the spreadsheet that
Right.
you created for it, right?
Yeah.
And maybe the process under it doesn't have to be huge, I don't think. I think it can also be like, again, it could be like 1-day courses that you've taken, right? Or a conference that you've participated in.
Yeah.
Or have attended. Those are examples for me. I don't know what do you think?
Yeah. I was thinking along the same thing. It could just be like a course that you take, even if it's,
Yeah.
online, if it's a webinar that you attended, and you felt like you actually got a lot out of
Yeah.
that webinar or that conference. And anything that you've helped anyone on.
Yeah.
Like say you and I were working together on a project and it's, you're the lead, but I helped
Yeah.
you get over that hump
Yeah.
where you were just like, oh, I
Yeah.
don't know what to do. I'm going to be pulling my hair out.
Yeah.
That's an accomplishment.
Listing the roles in those different and responsibilities and different kind of endeavors or projects, or it could be events, for example, if you put on an event.
Yeah.
What did you do? That's an accomplishment, right?
Yeah.
Because that all leads to you feeling like that you're not a fraud.
Right.
You
So
actually know
whatever
what you're doing.
when you're completing a task that's allocated to you directly. So
Yeah.
when you start something and then you finish it,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? It
Yeah.
doesn't matter what that is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think the other way that you can kind of do that is to have really good mentors too.
Yes.
So, yes, keep a file folder on those success things that you have accomplished, but also having really great mentors and identifying people that you can lean on, not just for everything, but also certain things in your career. And I think that's, as women, we can certainly acknowledge the fact that we have had mentors, both men and women, that we lean on for support or to really bounce things off of.
Yeah. So achievements. You have another method of trying to get over imposter syndrome?
Achievements? No, but what I can say is that like the only other method that I would think would be great in trying to deal with imposter syndrome is like trying to have like a daily affirmation that, right? And
Yeah, no,
putting,
that's great.
and it doesn't have to be like a super complicated one,
No.
right? Like
No.
just something.
Yeah. I think one that I would add to that would be to set small goals.
Oh yeah, that's a great one.
Right?
Yeah.
Realistic
Yeah.
goals.
Yeah.
based on the achievements that you've created in the past
Yeah.
and that list that, you're gathering now,
Yeah.
set small and realistic goals
Yeah.
to help you overcome that imposter syndrome, to show
100%.
you
That's
that you
great.
are you are worth what you're doing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It's like when you go into a performance evaluation, they always set little goals, right? For you
Yeah.
to kind of work towards.
Yeah.
Doing that on your own. As a leader, as a woman in the field, I think setting those kinds of parameters, I call them parameters, but goals to
Yeah.
achieve, right? And they don't, like you said, they don't have to be big,
Exactly.
right? Just little steps to help you get past feeling like you're some kind of fraud.
Yeah. And I also think too, being I think another method of trying to get over it in relation to the other three that we just mentioned
Yeah.
was is to also be self-minded.
Yeah.
Be self-aware.
Yeah.
Give yourself that grace.
Yeah.
We are not computers.
Ooh,
Not
and we're
one
not
person in this
perfect.
world knows
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Not even the latest and greatest. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? The top experts in their field. They don't know everything. They don't know
No.
everything about what they're doing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It's
It's
true.
always a village that comes together. So,
Yeah.
being mindful
Yeah.
and being kind to yourself, I think helps a lot. That would help you achieve,
Yeah. It's
the
true.
other three that we've mentioned.
Yeah, and I think what we're kind of not we're missing today in the conversation, but we're certainly going to start moving in that direction in the next episode is looking at, how as leaders we can create the environment where our staff feel safe to do those kinds of things
Yeah.
and to approach us, and that we need to celebrate all sorts of leadership styles in order to do that. So I think we can leave that off and give you a little tidbit to what's going to happen in the next episode. But then we want to thank you for your time, folks, and we really look forward to chatting with you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, one of the things before we sign off is we found a survey online where you can take to see if whether you have imposter syndrome. If you're not sure, given, the conversation that we've had today, there's a little survey that we can post on our website, which is called the fbombshow.com.
Yeah, it's coming.
So we'll post a survey there in relation to this episode today, and you can take that to see if you actually in fact have imposter syndrome, and it'll kind of at the end of the survey with your answer, it'll give you some tips on how you can help overcome that.
Yeah. All right, folks. Thanks for joining in. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks. Bye.